Hey everybody, welcome back to Mind Keys. So in today's video, I wanted to just kind of do a shorter video here to try to explain to you and answer the question of how do you take psychedelics with other people? Now, for me, this is a little bit of a funny question in that I grew up in a different era. I grew up in the 80s. I was a teenager in the 90s. I started taking psychedelics in the 90s. And we didn't have, internet shut-in culture. We obviously didn't have coronavirus and, lockdowns and all that. So for me, this is a bit of a funny question in that I come from a different era where this was not so much of a concern. But that being said, I'm also highly introverted, have been my whole life. So I do think it's a very fair and reasonable question, especially with the rise of people doing psychedelics for, self-therapeutic, reasons at home, with the rise of people, just kind of solo tripping. There's a lot more of it than there used to be. I think this is a good question and a valid question. And I want to just kind of offer you a little insight from my own experience. And hopefully it'll help you, hopefully it'll serve you. So let's go ahead and unpack and dive into it here. So, this really is meant for anyone who is new to psychedelics. Maybe you've taken them a few times and you're kind of planning to do maybe your first trip with somebody else, whether that's a friend or a crew of friends or a best friend or a partner or whatever. You're planning on taking it with someone else, but you haven't yet. And you're kind of like, how do I make sure this isn't awkward or weird and how it goes right? Okay. Well, obviously there's a lot to consider with that, but I want to try to make it simple here and kind of break it down to a few key things. So the first thing to kind of consider is obviously you can't control how other people are going to behave. You can kind of make, you can imply social agreements. You can even make overt verbal agreements of how you want to approach the journey together. And that's not a bad idea to kind of set an intention with everyone and be like, hey, how do we all want to do this? How do we all want to relate? What are kind of the rules of the space while we're here? That's not a terrible idea. I've seen it done before and it can work really well. But if you are putting yourself into a situation with a bunch of people who might fuck with you, who might be rude, who might be inconsiderate, I just want you, first of all, to realize that the biggest protector for you in terms of having fun tripping with other people is to choose wisely, to choose good people that you feel safe around, that you have a good vibe around, that you trust to create a good energy and where things are going to go well and generally be positive, right? So the basics of set and setting still apply here, and the other people around you are part of your setting. So make sure that that's good for you, that's going to work. I'm assuming that you know this. Okay, so given that the people around you are good and you're in a safe environment, which is all kind of a given, here are kind of some suggestions. Generally speaking, this is one of those areas of psychedelics where I think the hippies in the 60s actually really got it right with just kind of having a very open, permissive, do your own thing. It's all good as long as no one's hurting each other or hurting themselves or creating a really big, bad, weird energy, being super awkward or dramatic or intense. Generally speaking, making room for people to be weird, for people to be silly, for people to be, awkward and goofy because, childlike parts of us come out when we're tripping. To make room for people to be alone and be solo if they're feeling kind of melancholic and want to self-isolate or whatever, of being permissive of, playfulness. If someone's feeling really like goofy and wants to get up in your grill and, wants to like interact, generally just creating a really open-minded atmosphere with each other where there's just permission to go for it. If someone wants to say the weird thing, let them say the weird thing, and don't judge and don't shame and don't criticize. Be open-minded, open-hearted, and just kind of make that space. That's kind of the big, rule number one, I would say, is be permissive, and that includes with yourself. Be permissive with yourself. Allow yourself room to make mistakes, to be awkward, to be silly, to be vulnerable, to be dorky, to, if you want to put on some weird fucking funny clothing or strip naked, assuming everyone else is cool with it, give yourself the room to do you, basically. I think that that's a really big part of creating a really nice, social tripping atmosphere. A couple other things. Here's a couple other don'ts. Okay, so that's a big do. What are the don'ts? Big don'ts. Big don't number one is don't over psychoanalyze people or get too in your head and like trip out on them and try to figure them out and make sense of them, especially while they're talking to you and you're interacting with them. Don't do that, especially if it's like your partner, someone really close to you, your best friend, your sibling, someone like that. Don't try to psychoanalyze people when you're on psychedelics, because it just creates a really weird, awkward energy, which might send them into their own head. It could put them maybe in a bad trip or a weird space. And it just generally creates a lot of tension, a lot of awkwardness, a lot of disharmony, a lot of kind of implications of judgment. In general, you want to remove the shamey, judgy aspects of relating from the space. You know, like later on, if you're a shamey, judgy person, sure, pick up your shame and judgment stuff. I'm not a big fan of it, but if that's you, pick it up later on. But while you're tripping, make a safe space for everyone to just kind of be like kids again and be free and be silly and, you know, dorky and dirty and messy and wild for however long they need to. So don't psychoanalyze around you, anyone. And then another big point is, and this is kind of a specific, don't like dominate the stereo or movies or entertainment and like try to like get on some weird trip about showing everyone like your coolest shit or the latest shit. I've done this. I've made this mistake myself when I was younger. I've also seen other people do it too, where they kind of end up dominating, you know, the entertainment system or the sound system. And that can make its own weird vibe because maybe some people don't like your taste or don't resonate with it, or it's just kind of a heavy thing to have someone imposing their taste on everyone else. Avoid doing that. Just don't. Just in general, be flexible, go with the flow, negotiate. Another big thing that I think is a do would be to make sure that you really think about and maybe even negotiate with everyone how much alone space and solo space is chill. You know what I mean? So that, let's say some people sometimes might be on kind of a sad internal experience. They might want to go off and process by themselves, right? And that probably would be a positive, healthy thing. But sometimes that can turn into someone feeling isolated or stuck or alone or needing support and no one's showing up for them because everyone's just like kind of off laughing and playing or whatever. I've seen stuff like this happen a lot too. So you might want to make agreements with people ahead of time. Also, like, you know, how long should we let each other go be alone before we go check in just to make sure everything's cool? I mean, you can do this intuitively too, which is usually how it tends to work out in my experience in a lot of circles and situations. You kind of just, if you know, let people go off, do their own thing, explore themselves, have a moment alone. And, you know, if it's been a while, you might just kind of go check in gently and be like, hey, how's it going? You know, what's going on? You okay? Everything good? And just kind of make sure that people are feeling safe, happy, healthy, and in harmony. And if not, you know, sometimes it's nice to hold space and talk it out with people or give them room to process or whatever else needs to happen. But in general, I think the right vibe for a social trip is, you know, lighthearted, playful, easy, relaxed, non-judgmental, non-shamey, permissive, just kind of open-hearted, you know, making sure obviously you have all the basics covered, making sure you have food and water, that you have safe shelter of some sort, that you, you know, that you have good rapport and good friendship with everyone, and there's like a nice open vibe. Let me see. Yeah. And, you know, and that you have some sort of safety measures in place in case anyone gets hurt or in case, you know, someone like if you guys are going to take a lot, you know, and someone's going to trip hard, you might want some benzos in place just in case, you know, I don't really like benzos, but as a trip killer, sometimes they're useful in a really dramatic kind of scenario, maybe having, you know, resources like, you know, find phone lines in place for trip sitters or support if anyone really kind of, you know, fully gets into a really bad way. So short of that happening, generally speaking, it's just about keeping it lighthearted, permissive, allowing yourself to kind of be free and be kids and be messy and uncool and dorky and awkward and weird. And from that openness and that permissiveness, my experience is that so much positivity and healing and magic and fun and laughter and good vibes flow. You know, the more permissive the environment, generally speaking, the more fun and the more good vibes happen. So I hope this helps you a bit. And if you are going to be tripping with friends soon, I hope it goes really well for you. I hope you have a great time. I hope you have a beautiful experience. And if you have any questions, if I wasn't clear about anything, please feel free to leave me a comment down below. I love interacting with people who watch these videos on my channel here. And if you like this sort of thing, consider subscribing, consider giving a thumbs up to the channel or to the video here so that the algorithm knows to kind of boost it and put it out to more people. Anyways, big love to you all. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in another video soon.